Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Maria, and I'm so excited to be here co moderating tonight's session alongside Jen. Um, Sorry, my puppy decides to always go off. To quickly introduce myself, I am Maria. I'm the program manager for Unsinkable Youth. I am a mental health advocate, public speaker. I'm a child and youth counselor, and I specialize in mental health and addiction in youth. I also have my own lived experience, and um, through my ups and downs and my challenges, recovery, it's really inspired me to dedicate my career to supporting young people navigate complex needs. Unsinkable and Straight Up Health are thrilled to be co hosting the mental health check in navigating back to school together. This fireside chat is going to be amazing, and I'm super excited that we get to do this together. Um, it's going to be all about the back to school season. You'll hear directly from youth panelists who are currently experiencing it, parents who are navigating this and supporting their youth through this. And of course, we have a wonderful registered psychotherapist who is going to share their strategies and insights in navigating all of this. A quick introduction about Unsinkable is a Canadian mental health charity founded by Olympic Silicon lawmen. We believe that power of personal storytelling to foster connections, to reduce stigma, and to support wellness. Through our programs, we help people reflect on their own lived experiences, reclaiming their voice, and share their stories of resiliency and growth. For storytellers around Canada, the process is super healing and empowering. For the listeners, stories spark empathy and remind us that we are not alone, and that is so important. And we are so happy to be here collaborating and being a partner in this amazing webinar. Um, at Unsinkable, we also know that sharing stories with honesty and courage transforms isolation into belonging and creates lasting change in mental health. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping notes. Um, we have the chat function, so please feel free to engage with us. If you have your questions, you can also put it there. We also have a Q&A that we will try to answer all of the questions. But if we don't get to it, don't worry. We'll be sending a post-event email with the responses. That please specify who your question is directed to. And after the event, we will also be sending out a free toolkit by email. It's filled with the conversation prompts designed to help parents, caregivers, youth open up about their mental health in a safe and supportive way. Straight Up Health is also generously giving away their 360s recovery assessment and their 50-minute sessions with a licensed therapist. This expert intake process is clear, personalized roadmap from day one. You'll gain a full picture of your mental health, not just the surface symptoms, but exploring deeper factors in relationships, stress, identity, and all of that. And they will be able to match you with the right therapist that is going to fit your needs. So, very excited for that. And make sure that you are checking your email, especially your junk box, for that as well. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Jen to share a little bit more and start the conversation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I know it's obviously a very busy week right before school, which is why this conversation is very timely. So really appreciate you taking time out of your schedules, both for our people who are on our panel, as well as all of you who are attending. So first and foremost, thank you. My name is Jen Peacock, and I am the founder and CEO of Straight Up Health, which is a Toronto-based mental health and wellness and performance clinic for youth, families, and high performers. We work virtually across Ontario, British Columbia, Alberta, Nova Scotia, leading a multidisciplinary team that delivers personalized, proactive care to build clarity, confidence, and resilience. I'm so excited to introduce tonight's incredible crew of panelists who are bringing in their lived experience, expertise, and passion to the conversation. So as I introduce them, they're going to open up their camera here so that by the end of it, we'll all be on screen together. So first up is Felix Orasajo. He's a recent psychology graduate from York University with a love for learning and a passion for helping others unlock their potential. Felix combines his academic background with lived experience to inspire resilience and empower people to navigate life's challenges. Arissa Roy, an Indo-Canadian youth activist, children's book author, and documentary maker. She founded Project Power Global, which is a 2023 Diana Award recipient and has reached over 50,000 people worldwide through her work in education equity, youth advocacy, and global sustainability. Next up is Alex Howard, a mom of 2 teenage boys and a certified transformational coach based in Chelsea, Quebec. As a founder of Mind Mood Alive and creator of Zone of Aliveness method, she helps people reclaim energy, presence, and resilience, skills she uses every day in her parenting. Maria Rosa, a mother whose journey supporting her daughter's mental health has inspired her deep work in peer support, workshops, and skill building for parents and caregivers navigating similar challenges. Courtney Dowling, a registered psychotherapist who supports children, young adults, families, and adults with challenges such as anxiety, depression, interpersonal struggles, and emotional regulation. She brings a compassionate, integrative approach, drawing on CBT, DBT, and narrative therapy. And she's a therapist at Straight Up Health. I am also a mom of 3, so the topic and those that we're going to discuss today really hit home for me personally. We are very grateful to have each of you here tonight and to have your perspective and thoughts. So great appreciation for you all. At Straight Up Health, we are huge advocates of listening to youth voices so that we, as adults, caregivers, and educators, can support youth in the way that they really need. So to kick off the session today, I'd love to start with our youth voices, starting with you, Felix. I'm going to start with a question. What kind of support do you actually want from the adults in your life?
Yeah, thanks for throwing it to me to start things off. I'm excited. Really curious as to hear what everyone else has to say as well. But me personally, this is a great question because I'm somebody that has always kind of struggled to find my place in like understanding what I want in life, and I've always had different ideas of what the future looked like when compared to the adults in my life. And as someone that's come into adulthood, I'm starting to see both sides. But for me personally, I genuinely want a sense of understanding. Sounds a bit cliche, but when I look back, I always remember being really scared to approach adults in my life for support because I would mention my goals, my values, and things that I like envision for my future. And I'd always be met with that's not a good idea, or you're not going to be successful in that. So it's always been something that I'm like it's scary. I don't want to do it. But as I'm starting to get older, I'm starting to understand where they're coming from. They have an idea of what life looks like from their past experiences, from their could be their traumas or their successes. And so, in my mind, I would love for the adults to just genuinely just take a step back, like dissolve a little bit of their experience in life and kind of connect a little bit and understand that, in a different generation or this different like time or culture, like kids or youth, young adults, they want different things. There's some people that need different approaches and that it's okay. Especially with this back to school time, like I'm sure a lot of people are really struggling to like find purpose in what they're doing. I was one of those kids that was in school and I didn't feel like anything. I didn't feel motivated. I didn't know what I was doing there until I started to find a bit of purpose. So I would love for people watching, if you're, around that back to school um, vibes, if you're gonna go back to school, to really like reel it back and think about what you actually want, and not to fall into, oh, but they told me that this is right and that's right, or this is wrong. But yeah, that's how I envision things, you know.
Thanks so much, Felix. I have the pleasure of working with Felix. He's one of our facilitators for our youth program, and your insight is always way beyond your years. And I'm so happy that you're able to share all of the knowledge that you have. So thank you so much for bringing that to the table.
Thank you for saying that as well. I appreciate it.
And Marissa, I'm gonna um, kind of pass it off to you. I've had the pleasure of, watching you be part of Unsinkable and also your journey. And it is amazing to see you grow in so many different parts of your life. And this question really is perfect for you to answer because of that complexity that it has, around like, how do you manage big transitions, and how do you manage also your mental health? And I feel like any of us, well, for myself, you are the definition of what resiliency looks like when you have big transitions. So please, share your insight with us.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks, Felix, for your intro to kick off this panel. I think it was amazing, and I'm gonna also use some of what you said and share my experience too. I could relate. And thank you, Unsinkable and Straight Up Health, for inviting me today. It's great to see so many familiar faces and new faces too. Before I start, I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge that I'm calling in from Toronto, and I want to recognize that the land where this city now stands is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, and is covered by treaties like Treaty 13. So I just wanted to take a moment for us to recognize that. So I thought today the way I wanted to approach this is by telling a bit of a story. So when I was 13, I was driving, I don't even remember exactly where I was going, but I was with my aunt, who may be watching. So if you are, hi. And I heard about this school, and it's basically it's an international school, place where students from all over the world go to finish high school for the last 2 years. And you basically, it's like a boarding school, so you live and learn with students from all over the world. And at first I was 13, and I didn't think too much about it. I thought, oh, it's for high school, so I shouldn't have to worry about that now. So I just kind of brushed it off and didn't look at it again until the following year. I went to a camp where my cabin counselor, she was telling me how she was studying in Costa Rica, and she's also from Toronto. And I was like, how is that even possible? And Long and behold, it was the same school that my aunt was telling me about. And the school is United World Colleges. And basically, it's an education movement, an institution with campuses all over the world. There's 18. And the mission is to really use education as a place to foster peace and a sustainable future. And basically, you apply to something called your national committee. So I applied to the Committee of Canada. And you then go through a very rigorous process. And if you luckily get chosen, you are nominated to one of these 18 schools all over the world. So I'm really grateful that to say that I was nominated to go to the school in Italy. So I lived in Italy for the last 2 years. But it meant that at the age of 17, I packed up my bags, my several bags, as my mom would still complain about today. And I left my safe little zone in Toronto and my friends, and I moved to Italy, to a place where I didn't speak the language. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any connections, and that experience to this day has probably been the most transformational things that I've ever done. And I was 17, so at an age where there's already so much pressure and things are changing, and I was also doing a lot. I was involved with Unsinkable, and at the same time, I was working on my nonprofit. So I had many, many things going on. And so definitely, to be super transparent, I struggled with my mental health quite a lot during the transition from my school here in Toronto to my school abroad. And throughout my whole experience, I think I've fully accepted that every good thing that happens or every good opportunity will come with some degree of challenge. And that's just something that I feel like we have to accept. And I feel like once you do, it'll make it so much harder to, sorry, so much harder, so much easier to continue chasing after your dreams and the things that you want. Because when I applied to this school, I knew that I would leave home and it was really scary. And I didn't want to, but I knew also that it would come with a whole plethora of opportunities. So yeah, so today I just wanted to share three things that I did during this transition to school abroad that really helped me. And so the first one is protecting your peace at all costs. And I know this is a really famous quote, protect your peace, and but I think this has been instrumental in my whole mental health journey. Being away at school, whether it's, high school or university or any form of education, particularly for my case, I had peers from over 83 countries. So there was always something to learn. There was always a new conversation to be had. And I remember feeling like I always had to be on and I always should be doing something or learning something. Um, and I think I didn't actually, like, if I were to go back, because I graduated this May, I should say that. If I were to go back, I think I would give myself a bit more grace to take moments to reflect, and to really protect my peace because it's really easy when there's a lot of busyness going on to just sign up for everything, to just do everything, and you feel FOMO. I think a lot of young people feel FOMO, fear of missing out, about like what's happening. But I think what's important is to realize that what's most important is to take care of your own health and well-being so that you can show up for those communities that you want to help and those activities that you want to do. The second thing is asking for help. And I know it's really, really easy to say and really hard to do. But I'm proud to share that for the last, I think, 4 years, I've been in therapy. And I know that's not always easy to say also on like a webinar and to share publicly, but um, it's been really, really instrumental in my well-being as well to be able to have the space to talk about these big things and to do it with a professional, which I know that we have some even here with us today. So I would really recommend whether it's going and seeking help professionally or finding people in your circle to share with that you feel confident in. Asking for help is not a strength sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. So yeah, that's another big tip I would give. And lastly, I would say do what you're passionate about. Um, so my organization, we advocate for education, but one of the main things in that is we are advocating for the transformation of education systems. So you know, our whole society for many, many years has been structured around, you go to middle school, high school, university, and like it's kind of a path. And also for anyone out there who comes from a similar background to mine, I'm South Asian. There's also some cultural aspects that go into that as well. Um, but I think the biggest path to success is to follow your heart and follow what you're drawn to because that is what you're going to naturally be good at. So if you're starting school, I recommend, joining clubs or activities that will bring you joy, because that will make school or other aspects of, your transition a bit easier if you have those outlets to do what you love. So for example, I also dance and I sing. So at my school, I often choreographed some of the South Asian dances we did and also sang in like the choir and a cappella. And that was like something completely unrelated to what I want to do professionally, but I ended up doing it just in my own personal time. So those were three tips that helped me to take care of my mental health during this transition. And I would say, though, these tips might not help you because everybody's different. And I think that there's no one size fits all. So just play around with different tools that might be supporting you, but make sure that you do actually acknowledge it because mental health and wellness is extremely important. So, yeah, thank you so much for the time. Thanks.
Arissa, thank you very much for sharing that. I resonate with a lot of that, both from my younger years, but also as a parent now. So thank you, A, for sharing your story and your vulnerability around that. I loved what you said about how important it is to build resilience, and oftentimes resilience can be born out of discomfort. So I think my first question to you would be now, do you feel that you're afraid of discomfort and stressful situations, or do you feel like you have the skill set that you need to really tackle hard situations? Or is it an ever building and ever growing process for you?
Yeah, I feel like after moving away to UWC, um, I feel like a lot more resilient person because, I was we definitely had support systems there, but I feel like to some extent, um, leaving home at such a young age brought me into a lot of situations where I had to sort of learn how to build my confidence and know in myself and in my heart that I will be able to do this and I am capable of doing hard things. And I think, like, to answer your question, I feel definitely that I've become a more confident person, but at the same time, there is a quote that I also love. I'm a quote person, I should say that. But it's like you can be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. And I think that's so powerful. And I feel like, yes, I've grown a lot, but there's still so much to happen and life will bring to me that I look forward to learning from. But I just think that right now, yeah, I've reached a level of like I can do it, and I think that's really great. And I encourage everybody to also embrace challenge because that's how you really grow that level of resilience.
Thank you for sharing. And I just want to also touch on, obviously, Straight Up Health is the foundation of Straight Up Health is built on therapy, but just you explaining and expressing how grateful you are to have had that experience. I think really it comes down to what you said of it doesn't matter if it is a therapist or whoever it is, but it's having a confidant during those challenging times, I think can really move mountains for people. So thank you. I'm going to ask Felix. I have to ask you one more question since we missed you before. I'm wondering if you could help tell us what's one small thing you think schools could do that would make a big difference for students' mental well-being?
Okay, that's a good one. Wow, the thing is, there's already so many, I guess, options for students to delve into. Um, the thing is, most people, as much as they say, like, oh yeah, I know what to look for. I know if I ever need anything, I could go here. Nobody ever really uses it. And I sometimes wonder why. In all honesty, I don't know the exact answer, right? Because we all come from different places. A lot of us are from different cultures where asking for help is not really the thing to do. Um, I think that, first of all, accepting that like baby steps are needed. Like, I feel like we've already come a huge way when it comes to people searching for help. Um, Understanding that things like therapy, it's no longer like it's slowly becoming something that is normalized in our culture. If anything, it probably already is. Um, so I think for me, one thing that schools could especially do is just maybe get real with the climate that they're dealing with. Understand like what comes with searching for therapy. Or sorry, help in general. For example, a lot of students don't really have the time. There's certain like realistic obstacles, like real life obstacles that get into people's way. A lot of times you're waiting like 3 months to see a therapist. For example, I've I think around fourth year university, I came to terms with the fact that I needed help. I talk to like some like resources and they're like, oh yeah, like you're gonna have to wait 2 months. And I'm like, you know what, it's not even worth it. So it's tough because that's the reality we live in, right? There's not enough people to help with the amount of people searching for help. But these are like realistic problems that eventually should be addressed. Or even like give alternatives. Like I think there should be some ways around it or things to mitigate the the struggles that these people that are looking for help actually face. Um, but in general, yeah, to just come to terms with the fact that it's not as easy as it seems, even though there are those options. A lot of times they go unrecognized. Um, there's cultural factors. There's so many obstacles, and those obstacles like slowly need to be chipped away. But again, we've come a long way. That's something I'm very happy about. Yeah.
I completely agree. And thank you. And I think that's why it's important to have both the youth and the parent voices. And I'm going to hand it over to the parents in a sec. But I think that's why part of the conversation is really important to have both, because it's worthwhile for us as parents to know that our kids are trying and maybe they're coming up against barriers, or maybe there's barriers that there are unforeseen or they don't know how to manage. And 4 months is a really long time. So kudos to you for maintaining and appreciating that and understanding and figuring out a way. Because I think it's really important for everybody involved to know that these things can take time, but also there's a lot of barriers in place. So thank you very much to both of you for sharing your perspective. I'm going to hand it over now to hear the parent voice, which I think is also incredibly important, both from parents or caregivers understanding what it's like from a youth perspective and what they need and how we can help. But I think it's also equally as important for youth to hear from a parent and caregiver perspective how we can feel and what's going on and all the layers that are involved in that. So I'm going to ask Alex a question here. And Alex, I'd love to know, how do you manage your own stress and emotions while caring for somebody else's?
Thanks, Jen. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Felix and Arissa for a beautiful segment. It was really, really insightful and beautifully shared. So thank you for that. And it's also a really beautiful segue into my segment, my section here. And such a great question. And as I was pondering this question, I kind of realized that, for me, I have two boys. I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old. And so, and they're, I really noticed that for me, managing my stress as a parent really starts with noticing when I'm trying to carry my kids' emotions as if they're my own. And I honestly don't get it right all the time, but what I've learned, and then mostly from trying to listen to my boys, is that my stress, yeah, it usually comes from trying to manage their experience instead of just supporting it. And when they have those normal worries, like when you start school, like I've had these chats with my boys already, like what's worrying you, what's on your mind, what's feeling important for you right now, and will I have friends, will I fit in, will I like it, will I keep up academically, will my teachers get me? These are all worries that our kids have, and I often have the same worries myself. And, as a parent, my instinct is like just to step in and fix it, kind of take the brunt. But what I've noticed for me, as a parent, what helps most isn't really my interference and my solutions. It's really my presence. And I've come to understand that over a period of time. But so like for me, how I handle that with my kids is, it looks like having mini check-ins with them, and asking questions and not making statements. And I think this speaks to Felix's, his words earlier, like when the parents are always kind of peanut gallerying and saying things and layering on top. And so for me, it's like, I want to make sure that like I want to ask, like, how are you feeling about tomorrow? Like, how do you want to challenge yourself today? Like, what's on your mind right now? Um, and I think it's so important, um, like as a parent, to kind of know where your kid is at, and for them to want to speak to you and to share with you. And like I always say, that's like my biggest success as a parent. If my kids talks to me, I don't care what you say to me, but just talk to me. And so I realize, and I've kind of made that connection that like, just ask questions, just be curious about their experience and forego making statements. And one of the best ways that I do that, where we have a carpool, we take kids to school and back, um, and I have this ritual with the kids in the car, and at the end of every day, pick them up, and I only ask one question: what was the best part of your day? And it's a really great question because it orients them towards what went well. And they're like, and they always sit and think about it, and they're like, huh. And there's this little mini silence. And I love that silence because that silence tells me that they're like, huh, like I haven't actually thought about that. And maybe something really great happened today, and inevitably, and then I tell them that they're not allowed to choose recess anymore or lunch. Because that's usually what it came back, I'm like, okay, something else. But that, that question and that probing, as a parent, you know, like I just want to know where they're at. I just want to know what's happening and where you are and what's going on. And so these questions, without making and then I say nothing, like zero, zilp. I go, great, fantastic, beautiful, and I move on. And so that's for me the presence, I think, that I've come to understand and cultivate is one of just stop at the question and let them say whatever they need to say. um, and listening, even when it's messy. And I think that's a really good point that's been made. Like, some of these answers are not going to be well crafted and scripted answers. It's not a TED talk. like sometimes you get back something really simple, or sometimes it can be a little more deep or rich, but like just getting really curious about what the experience is like. And also, that for me, it also sends a signal that you're not here to judge, and you want to support them in their own process, whether I get it as a parent or not. um, and that just helps to foster a little bit of that two-way communication that I think as parents we need to know where you are. And as kids, they need to know that we're there, that we're present, and we're available and around. And so for me, it also looks like, trusting my boys' decisions, um, even when I do it differently. And I think like checking myself, uh, because half the time like my stress isn't even about them, it's about me. If I'm to be really honest, right? As a parent, my stress, so like my need for things to look a certain way, my fear of being judged as a parent, that's big. That's a real thing. And also that FOMO, like it's not just with the kids, but it can exist also with the parents. That fear of missing out, if we're really honest and real about it. And so we want our kids to like, not fall behind and not do all, and so we're like, so that's a real thing. And I think when I own that piece, that stress is like, that lives with me. And those are my stories. Like, I think Felix was alluding to that. Those are my narratives, my story, my stuff. When I own that, it really does free not just me, but the kids and our relationship and how we communicate together. This presence that I speak of also, it means giving them space when they need it. And I think this one's a big one that I've noticed as a parent, like not over talking challenges. I think there's something where we have to like get to the bottom of everything all the time. And I think sometimes it's like we can just let things be a little bit and let things percolate, let things marinate. We don't have to over talk too much. I think there is a line sometimes where kids are like tapped out and they're like, okay, I can't talk about this anymore, and let them explore and let them figure out how to, you know, what works, what doesn't work. But then circling back to let them know that we're here. So I feel like there's a little bit of a fine line there sometimes. And I know when my kids tap out, like I know when that happens and I'm like, okay, enough of that, moving on. So I think the shift for me, has been really realizing that like my kids don't need me to protect them from stress. And I think Arissa,
Mm.
his point was excellent, right? It's like stress is a good thing. We need to learn how to manage our own stress. Stress isn't a bad word. There's so much goodness that can live in there, and challenges and stretching and all this good stuff. So um, my kids need me to be steady enough
Mm.
to walk through it with them.
I love that.
That's what I've learned. So, so moving away from fixing more to like, you know, self-regulating and meeting them in their experience. So, that's what I would say. And a few things is like leaving space in my calendar, right? For checking in,
Mm.
moving my body, breathing, and just remembering that like my kids get to have a life experience their own way, and they're more capable than I think.
That's amazing. Alex, I feel like every time I hear caregivers talk about their way of supporting not just themselves, but their children, um, and to see that I did not have that privilege. Um, it does give me that sense of healing my inner child, to be like, that is amazing. And, you know, I I love that you have this stability, and that's something that people in general need. So thank you so much for sharing your insight. Um, Maria Rosa, I've always said I am here for you to adopt me. It's never too late. I've had, again, the pleasure of working with Maria Rosa for since I was 16. So it's been over a decade for sure. And you know, watching you navigate, um, you know, working together with your kids in the good times and the bad times and the ups and the downs, what helped you come to the environment to be able to create trust and or connection with your children? And what did that look like?
Thank you, Maria. And I'm so glad to be here, all of you. I'm just listening and making notes. And I have enjoyed watching Maria grow, so that's been my privilege. I guess, you know, to answer that, I would also like to start with a little story, because it was my first aha moment at what building connection and how important that was. In my role as a parent caregiver, I should also say that I have 3 kids, 22, 24, and 25 and a half. Doesn't want me to say he's 26 yet. He's already afraid of aging. He has no idea. They taught me everything I know. I'm going to start there. And the first time that I realized how important connection was in therapy with my youngest, who's been diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder. And she was always on the ground and having temper tantrums. And at the same time, when she wasn't having temper tantrums, it was like a place for her to self-soothe. And, you don't want to see your child on the ground, because this didn't happen all the time in our house. It happened out in the world where there was, dangerous situations or not clean. So I went there, get up, get off the floor. And in therapy, I learned that it's really important to get on the floor. And it was my first aha moment at building connection meant I needed to meet them where they were, no matter how uncomfortable I was and no matter how uncomfortable they were. So we had to kind of sit in discomfort together. And that did not come easy, and it did not come quickly. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But I had to shift my parenting because I was no longer parenting young children who needed my protection. So I sort of changed it to parenting through guidance as opposed to protection. Always want to protect them. I mean, if I could just put them in a bubble, I'd be so happy. But that's not reality. So I'm still protecting, but as opposed to my fear-based parenting, I started making connections with them through my, and I say this because, whoa, it took me so long to understand what this meant, but to truly relax in my parenting and allow them to do some of the moves, what letting go meant to me. I didn't understand it at first, right? Letting go. What do you mean? If I let go, they're gonna go. Then what do I do? But letting go also means embracing that you can trust them, that you've been there for them, and it's time for them to show up for themselves, because the natural consequences of that is going to be their life lessons. It's going to build their resilience. It's going to make transitions easier because they're going to innately develop skills that you're going to help them to achieve. So a partnership started. Is how I started looking at my parenting. I wasn't looking at trying to solve my kids as problems, but to understand them as people, because that's what they were, I brought them into the world, but they're not mine to, obsess and control. They're mine to enjoy. And it was really stressing me out, this parenting with fear, because it also put a lot of pressure on me, and set myself up for disappointment and not understanding that, you know what? If I put myself out there and they see that I'm putting myself out there, meaning I'm uncomfortable parenting this moment, I've never done this before, can we work together? It led to asking questions. How does this feel for you? What do you expect? What's the purpose here? Going back to what Felix was saying about, they just want a sense of purpose, and that's really hard to explain to a young adult trying to navigate ever-changing worlds and pressures that they come with. So I had to balance that between guiding them and allowing them. And when they fell, I got on the floor with them. I didn't even try to pick them up. And that was kind of, it was a risky take. I was, this was not something I learned. This was not the parenting I was parented with. I was parented in fear. And ultimately it shaped me. So I also learned not to carry my trauma with me, but to carry the experience and the lesson from that trauma. And that was also a big shift, because as I opened my mouth to speak, I can hear my mom and my tias and my grandparents, and and I was like, whoa, y'all can't come along with me on this journey. It's mine. I get to do this my way now. And that was empowering for me as a parent, to just kind of go, I don't have to do it the way it's always been done. I don't have to do it the way I was taught. I can do it the way my kids need me to be doing it. And you're only going to get there and create that connection when you start asking them, what do you need from me? And when they say, I don't know, you say, then we don't know together, and we're going to figure it out. And if you don't want to go to school today, your consequences, you're going to miss out on this, that, and the other, but maybe you're going to gain some self-care time and fill up your bucket, and tomorrow's another day. And I had to learn how to say that over and over, even though I ran from the situation, panicking, going, now what am I going to do? This is her third day home. They're going to kick her out. And that's where I connected with the schools and learned that my connection with resources was going to ultimately connect me to them again. And that was going to build trust between us, because they saw me doing the work on their behalf, not for them. So when I got to that place where, you know what, we need to talk about game plans and who we can connect with and what this looks like, school or otherwise, dance, soccer. I mean, we transition them through so many things all at once, this time of year. What the heck? Who planned this? I want out. It's heavy. It's real heavy. So I started letting go of that. And like, I don't have to carry all this heaviness. Let's do this together. So being able to balance that, where I was still the parent, You know, my son tells me to this day, you're on a tight ship. I do, but you're allowed to jump off anytime you want and sink or swim. And will I be there with the lifeboat? Of course. So it just became that comfort zone. And that naturally led us to the connection we have today. So I actually grouped them all together prior to this event and went, here's my question. Here's what I think I should be saying. And they were like, yeah, yeah, you did that. So I got a pat on the back, and I got to tell you, that felt better than anything, any validation that, you know, I could have had as a parent. Validating them all this time has taught them how to validate me and others. And that's the connection now they get to take with them as they navigate their life. So I hope I answered the question. Talked a lot.
Very much so. Thank you. I love your analogy of the lifeboat. I'm going to take that, carry that with me. And I thank you for sharing how so many parents and caregivers actually feel. And it can sometimes feel impossible to let go, but sometimes obviously it's necessary. And allowing our children to grow is the greatest gift that we can give them. So thank you from sharing from experience how successful that has been for you. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
now we're
Jen.
going to turn it over to Courtney. And I think it's such a nice segue to hear from a registered psychotherapist who works with youth day in, day out, and works with parents day in, day out, because it's such a valuable perspective to hear from your voice, Courtney, what you see and feel, and also to help give guidance to those of us who just want the best for our kids. So I'll start off with the question of what themes do you hear in youth and parent experiences during this very transitional back to school phase?
Well, thank you so much for that question, Jen. And I just want to apologize. I am fighting a bit of a flu with going back to school season as well. So excuse my voice if it gets a little bit raspy at all. But first of all, I just want to say that incredible what I've heard so far. I mean, Alex and Maria, just the insights that you brought as parents, I mean, almost brought a tear to my eye. That this is exactly what you two talked about here, is what I try to help parents with. So I think you both did an incredible job. And for the teens too, Felix and Arissa, you were both amazing and incredible in just sharing your experiences and being vulnerable. So it's really cool to hear it from this point of view, because usually I'm in a clinical setting where I'm hearing it in a more, anxiety provoking light. So it's really cool to see that a lot of you have come out on the other side, and every day is a challenge, but you've learned so much and you're all incredible. So that was really cool for me to see. So I think what I'll do and how I'll answer this question is sort of give the perspective of the youth as well as the parents, because I work with youth and teens and I also work with their parents. So I think that a lot of the things that the youth struggle with going back to school are the same things that the parents are struggling with too. And we can sort of end up in the same storm, the youth and the parents, but they're on different boats. And they end up being not on the same team, even though they're struggling with almost the exact same things. So that's kind of what I think I'll go at it from. So I'll talk about some of the themes that I see with youth coming in with this transitionary period. And first of all, it is a rough time going back to school. It's rough and tough. And there are so many elements of it. There's so many aspects to it. There's so many ups and downs. And, it's really hard for our youth and our parents. So the themes that I see, I'll talk about maybe 3 themes that I see most prevalent with my youth and the teens that I see. And one of those is just overall this anxiousness, a lot of anxiousness going into the school year. And, that can look like so many different things for teens. And I think Alex had mentioned it earlier that her boys, have these what if questions. And that's what I work with my teens a lot on. The teens that I work with is those what ifs that come up. And it's this anxiousness about sort of this big unknown. And although they're going back to school and they know what to expect to a certain degree, there's also so much unknown. Who will my teacher be? What if I'm not as close with the friends that I was close with before the school year ended? What if the friendship dynamics have changed? Who will I sit with at lunch? What if my lunch period is not the same as my friends? So there's all of these what if questions, and I like to work with my teens on those questions of what ifs, and that the anxiety comes with that too, because we're not really getting the answer to those questions in the moment. So those big what ifs are creating these anxieties, and it's hard because we don't get the answer to those questions, and our brain really likes answers. And especially teens, especially parents, our brains really love answers going into the school year. And there's just this big unknown that causes a lot of anxiety for our teens. Um, Also involved in that is some separation anxiety, right? Like our teens have just spent the summer with their friends, they've spent the summer with their family, maybe they went on vacation, maybe they had a great time at camp. So it's such a change in that separation of just being at home or being at camp with friends. So there's a lot of anxiousness going into the school year. That's one. Another one is just this pressure. It's coming from all angles. It's coming from themselves. It's coming from their coaches, their teachers, their parents. It's coming from all angles, and it can feel really extremely heavy. And this pressure, it just builds and builds. And in combination with all of the unknown that they're experiencing, teens are putting pressure on themselves to do better than they did last year. And they put a lot of expectations on themselves going into the year. And they just want to get the ground running and get into it. And it's a lot of pressure on them, which sort of creates this anxiety too. And then a third one, I would say one of the top themes that I see with youth is just overall change in routine. It's a lot of change and transition going into the school year, and school can be very overstimulating for a lot of our teens. And the bright lights, the constant chatter, classrooms are extremely loud. And they might have had a really calm summer. They might have had a really nice time at camp, or with their parents, and having coffee in the mornings and ice cream at night. And now they're going right back into that really, really overstimulating environment. And with that is also just the change in routine. Teens have 100 things to do by 12 o'clock in the afternoon when school starts. And in the summer, they have a bit more of that flexibility. So it can be really hard, just that overall change in routine going back to school. So those are kind of the top themes that I see with youth and teens coming in. And then with parents, it's very similar, but I would say that there's a huge worry and anxiety for parents about their kids, right? Their kids' well-being, their kids' social pressures, their kids' academic pressures. Maybe the parents are even, wanting their kid to live out what they experienced and what they didn't experience. And so there's a lot of anxieties for the parent, and the what ifs for the parent too. Well, what if my child is reluctant to go to school again? What if they're having a hard time waking up in the mornings? What if the same things as the youth? So there's a lot of worry about their child's well-being going into the school year. And I think, like Alex and Maria said, it's really tough because you want your kid to succeed so badly, and sometimes we can let that override us so much. So that's a big thing I see with parents. Another thing is just this huge logistical fatigue going into the school year again, having lunches made, getting, Claire off to dance, getting Jimmy off to soccer, getting everyone everywhere at all of the same time. And it's just, parents think about that, and they think about what happened last year and how incredibly exhausting it is. And so I think that's huge as well. That logistical fatigue is coming back up. The third one is that I'm thinking of for my parents too, is just this sort of, I don't want to say denial, but kind of like, oh no, I want to live out my summer. I have 1 week of August left. I don't even want to touch next week. Next week seems like the scariest thing in the entire world. So I'm just going to put it over here for now. And it's so understandable why parents do that, because it's so incredibly exhausting going into the year again. But really what we want to do, and what I help parents with, is just to really name it with your kids, see how they're doing. They're probably in the same boat. They don't want to touch next week. And so you're both anxious about the looming unknown of next week and pushing it to the side. But in reality, you're both struggling with the same thing. So it's so helpful to just name it with your kid, with your child and your teen. And yeah, that's what I would say, that I see a lot of, those are the main themes that I see with parents and youth going into the school year.
Thank you so much, Courtney. All of that inside is so helpful. Just trying to, recognize what the themes are that people are experiencing, that sometimes you don't see that when you are experiencing all of that, and hearing it from somebody else, you're able to kind of say, oh, okay, yes, change. I'm not a fan. This
Mhm.
is, I'm coping a little bit different in a way that isn't working for me. And with that, I want to ask, what is something that is, a simple strategy that is also tangible, that we can give out, and for youth and parents, kind of briefly, that is going to help during this transition period?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that a nice tangible strategy that I work a lot with my parents and teens on, and it's helpful for both teens and parents, I implement it in my everyday life, is when you start to notice that your emotions are getting a bit higher, they're getting to a point where they're becoming all consuming too much, is something called TIP, and it's TIPP. I'm not sure if people have heard of it here. It is a DBT skill, so it's derived from dialectical behavioral therapy. But what it is the T stands for temperature, the I stands for intense exercise, the P stands for paced breathing, and the last P stands for progressive muscle relaxation. So don't use them all at once, but this is a really good strategy just for bringing yourself down and, really just validating that you are going through something. And if you notice that it's getting a bit heightened, what's really helpful is just to change your temperature. So taking a nice cold shower, splashing some cold water on your face for a little bit, taking a warm shower, just overall changing your temperature. About 20 minutes of intense exercise. You don't need to go crazy. Go for a little walk for 20 minutes or do a nice little HIIT exercise for 20 minutes. And the P, pace breathing. Breathing is the holy grail, in my opinion, of just helping ourselves, helping our emotions. Just taking a breath in really intense moments can do so much good in these moments. So that's really helpful in whatever sort of pace breathing exercise works for you. A lot of people like the finger method, you trace your fingers, or the box breathing method, you breathe in for 4 and out for 4. And then the last P is progressive muscle relaxation. So it's a type of meditation where you tense and relax each muscle going from head to toe. And you can really do that in bed. You can do it on the couch. You can do it really anywhere where you have, a couple minutes to do that. And what that does is it just, decreases your emotions in those moments if they're getting really heightened. But yeah, that's a great tangible strategy to use for when emotions are getting really high.
I love that. Thank you. It's one of my personal favorites. I did put in the chat. And I really, for me, when I, have just the intense emotions, right?
Mhm.
It's just having like cold shower and whatever I can tolerate. And sometimes it's just like 5 seconds. Then it really helps me kind of bring myself back, and I can breathe again. And that's why I like the winter. And I know it's controversial. I hear that. I know Felix and I talk about it all the time. But it does help with my anxiety. It really reduces it. So, thank you so much for sharing all these tangible, and you don't have to buy anything. That's the beauty of TIP. It's like it's already your house, you already have it, and you're able to utilize that. I want to bring it back to all of us, and I'm gonna start with you, Felix. And I do want to be mindful of time, but answering, as a facilitator, and you have been an amazing facilitator that has really supported the youth program. How do we better support each other during times of transition. And that's something we talk about a lot in group. Yeah, give us your insight.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for gassing me up always.
Always.
But yeah, so first of all the answers that I heard were absolutely beautiful. And I'm gonna take from Maria Rosa because like it's crazy. It's something that I've been thinking of a lot recently. Maria Estrada has mentioned it, but it's genuinely just accepting on both sides. Like we have to meet each other on both sides, right? The person seeking help and the person helping, just accept that sometimes it's not going to line up. The person that's seeking help, or so the person that's helping, isn't always going to find that in the person that they're trying to help. That they're not always going to want your help. You know, it's tough because even me, like I'm the person that's like, please, like let me just be there for you. Let me just do this and that. It doesn't work out like that all the time, and so we have to accept that there's going to be hurdles. There's going to be, especially in times of transition, like it's very volatile. You don't know what this person's going through. We just sometimes have to accept it. And when it comes together, it'll be beautiful, right? You'll get your chance to be there for them, get a chance to bring them to another point in their life that they can then be that like free bird that you've been trying to get them to be. But it is what it is. I've learned as I get older to just let things be, and that there will be a time for you to be that person. So I don't know. I hope someone can relate to that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No worries.
Pass it off to Alyssa.
Okay, great. Wait, sorry, can you repeat the question? Is it the same question?
Yes. How do we support, how we better support each other in times of transition?
Yeah. Um, okay, I would say, yeah, I mean, just building off of what Felix has already said, but definitely meeting people where they're at. I think my best friend and I often talk about it, like whenever we have something that's gone wrong, a lot of time we tell each other like, hey, like I don't necessarily need your advice or your opinion on this thing. I just need someone to listen and to know that I'm listening and I'm hearing you and that the person feels heard. And I think um, feeling heard and being validated is the first step to what's next. So yeah, I feel like it's very natural to like hear someone talking about a struggle that they're having and then say, oh, well, you can do this or you can do this or you can do this. But like sometimes all people need is just someone to listen. So yeah, active listening. I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna rip off of what you both said. I think it starts with dropping this idea that we should just all have it handled. I think transitions, whether they're back to school or life transitions, job transitions, whatever the case are, they're messy. They just are by nature. And so pretending that they're not, I think it makes it a lot harder. And so I think we can support each other by just naming what's real, like what we're doing here today. And that, and asking those honest questions and listening. Again, I love that word, listening without rushing to fix or judge, or give advice, and just letting each other move through things in our own way.
Maria Rosa.
Oh, technical difficulties. Push all the buttons first. I guess I'm going to go to a place of something that I learned really late, and I do it more and more as I'm getting older, and my kids are too, is the self-care piece. That to me helps me support others because then I'm taking care of myself, including my kids. And I'm a firm believer of it takes a village. So what I like to do is make a little list of things that like bring me joy or help me cope, or someone to call, or sometimes it's just a vent session I need with a friend, or, sometimes it's just, I make a list of things that my kids like to do that if I see, their emotions are getting dysregulated, that I can say, hey, let's do this together because I know it'll distract her or him for like a hot 5 minutes. But yeah, I think the self-care piece is something that as parents, we don't really understand because it doesn't have to be anything grandiose. It just can be a moment of your alone time, be it in your car or your bedroom or the bathroom. Alone time's alone time, and it's precious. So finding that time for yourself. Thanks.
Courtney, did you want to
It's
share?
my turn. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think how we can better help each other in moments of transition like this is just really approaching from curiosity. Um, because I think that when we think about curiosity instead of needing to fix or needing to push our own narratives on something, we really approaching with curiosity can just open up conversation. And I think that that's really important in times of transition is just open conversation from parents and teens and the people that are around, right? Even family, teachers, like our teens can experience and our parents, we all experience really invalidating environments out there in the world. School can be really invalidating, work and sports and so many things can be really hard. And so I think just approaching with curiosity and having these open conversations can do such good and just allow people to be themselves and open up about what they're struggling with. And I think that's a great way to approach these times of transition. It's just opening up and being curious about what's going on.
Thank you all for sharing. We're going to open the floor now to questions. So if anybody does have a question, please, you can just put it in the question box. I know oftentimes when we do these panels and discussions, some people do have questions, but maybe don't want to put it in the chat. So just know that all of us are available and welcome any questions that you have online or offline. So if you do have questions that you don't want to ask, please connect with Maria or myself, and we'll make sure that the question is addressed for sure. But for now, I will just start with a question that's here. So this is for Courtney. Courtney, what advice would you give to kids who are experiencing bullying or exclusion at school?
Oh, that's hard, first of all. And bullying is such a horrible thing, and it's unfortunately very prevalent and very much in our society, that can look like socially, online getting bullied, at school getting bullied. I think that that's one of the hardest things that kids experience at school, and it can make kids not want to go at all, which is so understandable. And I think that, it's really, really beneficial for kids to have a place. I think Felix was talking about this before, where he felt like he just didn't have a place to go and say these things. And I think it's important for kids to have that open space and that safe space for them to talk about these experiences. And that can start with the adults in their life. So at home, their parents, just really letting the floor for these conversations. So, what went on at school today, and opening up the floor for them to talk about these things. And I think it's really important too for kids to have a team around them, support people that really understand them and listen to them. And I think it's great for teens to look for that support system and to ask their parents for that support system, whether that's a peer at school, whether that's a teacher that they confide in, whether that's a coach, but just having that support network for them to openly talk about these things and share, because I think keeping these things inside, it does a lot more harm and, can be really an unsafe place to be. So just having really the floor for the teens to talk about it if they are experiencing bullying, which is a horrible thing. And yeah, having those safe people that they can talk to about it, and then moving on from there if it gets more serious.
Thank you. A question for Arissa. What are some common signs of mental health struggles students may show during back to school transitions?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to my experience, but also the experience I've seen of my friends, and also, you know, in my old high school, well, actually, in my new school and my old school, I was in the mental health and well-being group. So I've seen a number of challenges that people have faced. I would say the biggest like indicator, I would say, is sort of isolation. So when I've noticed my friends maybe like pulling away from me and from other activities, or not showing up to class or to, you know, our extracurricular things, um, I think that was an indicator for maybe something going on that, you know, people don't know about, or they're going through. So I'd say isolation, and also um, I can also speak to an example I know of, an individual who changed a lot about their habits and themselves in a very short period of time, which I feel like indicated that they were struggling. And I think, yeah, those are the two things I would say. But in both cases, I would say the best thing to do is to approach with, you know, again, listening and genuine care, if you would like to see and if you can support that person, and definitely go in with without judgment. I think that's most important. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm also going to see Courtney might want to weigh in on that question as well, which I think would be important. And I think also Courtney, there's another question here that's just around social anxiety and helping support people who deal with that as part of back to school. So maybe if you could just answer in a twofold, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. The question about social anxiety, is it just how to support when going back to school?
Yeah, it's how
Like,
to support an individual who suffers from social anxiety about returning to school.
okay, awesome. So firstly, I would say that Arissa, I mean, she answered that so beautifully. I think that um, some things to look out for, you know, with your teen is that isolation piece that Arissa was mentioning earlier. Whether that's, you know, isolating to their room or not coming out as much, not hanging out with their friends. I think an indicator could be something like, you know, if your teen really loves something, they slowly stop doing that thing. That's something to look out for too. Really, any changes in routine, any changes in habits. Something to look out for, you know, eating habits, sleeping habits, if those change. Really anything you notice. I do want to say though that really it's so easy to jump to conclusions in those moments, and just making sure that you have that open conversation with your teen, and just approaching, like I said earlier, with that curiosity on things. So saying something like, I've noticed this, can you tell me more about that, rather than what is going on or what is wrong. So really just approaching with what I've noticed, and that can really just open up the conversation to allow your teen to want to share with you what's going on. And you know, it could be something to do with it, but it also couldn't, you know. So it's just really opening up that conversation for your teen, and just if you are noticing those changes in routine, changes in habits, isolating more, those are some things to look up for sure. But okay, the second question. So social anxiety, going back to school. How we can support teens with this is, I mean, first of all, it's so understandable that they're experiencing social anxiety going back to school. School is a really scary place socially, and there's a lot of cliques, there's a lot of there's bullying, there's a lot of, you know, chatter, there's a lot of back talk, there's a lot going on at school. And you know, it, as a teen, it's very common to leave people out and not bring everyone together. And just there's a lot of dynamics that go on during high school. And I mean, I'm sure everybody here has experienced that too when they went to high school. There's a lot that goes on socially. And teens are more susceptible to those bigger emotions, and that can be really, really hard. And not knowing where you fit in, and is this person closer with that person now, and where do I fit, in all of this? And it's really just finding that place for you. But I think that social anxiety, it's if your teen is really struggling, therapy is such a beautiful place for them to just talk about what they are experiencing. A lot of the time, I like to talk with my teens about that our brain really likes to make up stories about ourselves, about the world. And some of these stories have a lot of cognitive distortions in them. So, something like, oh, well, I'll never fit in. And why even try? And these people leave me out. So why would I try? And so a lot of these messages can get so ingrained with our teens and just cause a lot of social anxiety. So I think it's important just to validate that experience and know that it's hard going into the year, and it's hard with all of these different social dynamics, and to just, like I said before, just open up the floor for them to talk and have someone to talk to about it. And just know that every teen experiences this too, this social anxiety. There's so much going on, and it's not talked about enough amongst the friend group. But it just, even having that safe person, if you have a friend that you can open up to, look, I get really anxious when I'm around a group. I get really anxious when this one person is here. And just having those safe people to talk to about that can really, really help.
Thank you so much, Courtney. That was really insightful. We will take any of the other questions that have been asked. We will definitely follow up either with you personally, or we're always accessible via email as mentioned. But I just want to be cognizant of the time. And again, thank you so much to everyone for coming and listening to everything tonight. Hopefully there are some key takeaways that you can take with you as you enter this back to school phase that will be starting next week, or for some of us with more university aged kids, it started already. So thank you so much for our panelists for joining us tonight. I really appreciate all of your insights and for taking the time out of your day. You are all brilliant in your own ways. So thank you from all of us here. And just before we close, there's a few quick reminders. You will be receiving a follow-up email in the next few days with a copy of the toolkit and responses to any extra questions that come in. And we'll also send out the session recording. So if you want to revisit anything that was said, if you want to share it around, please feel free to do so. There will also be a short survey included, and we would be very grateful if you could take a few minutes just to give us your feedback. It helps us shape any future conversations that we're looking to have like this. So please give us any insights or feedback if there are certain topics that you want us to discuss, because the more we hear from you, the more we can make sure that we're adding value. And of course, as Maria mentioned at the beginning, we'll be announcing the 3 winners of the 360 Discovery Assessments via email as well. So keep an eye out on your inbox to see if you won a 360 Discovery Assessment. And on behalf of the Unsinkable and Straight Up Health teams, thank you again for spending this time with us. Wishing you all a very smooth and supportive start to the school year. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.